He almost said as much to Pollyanna, but something stayed the words on his lips, and after a time he took his leave, carrying the letter with him. That Jimmy did not drop the letter, tear it up, give it to anybody, or throw it away was evidenced a few days later, for Pollyanna received a prompt and delighted reply from Miss Wetherby. And when Jimmy came next time, he heard it read, or rather, he heard part of it, for Pollyanna prefaced the reading by saying, "Of course, the first part is just where she says how glad they are to come and all that. I won't read that. But the rest I thought you'd like to hear, because you've heard me talk so much about them. Besides, you'll know them yourself pretty soon, of course. I'm depending a whole lot on you, Jimmy, to help me make it pleasant for them." "Oh, you are? Now, don't be sarcastic just because you don't like Jamie's name," reproved Pollyanna, with mock severity. "You'll like him, I'm sure, when you know him, and you'll love Mrs. Carew." "Will I, indeed?" retorted Jimmy huffily. "Well, that is a serious prospect. Let us hope, if I do, the lady will be so gracious as to reciprocate." "Of course," dimpled Pollyanna. "Now listen, and I'll read to you about her. This letter is from her sister Della, Miss Wetherby, you know, at the Sanatorium." "All right, go ahead," directed Jimmy, with a somewhat too evident attempt at polite interest. And Pollyanna, still smiling mischievously, began to read. "You asked me to tell you everything about everybody. That is a large commission, but I'll do the best I can. To begin with, I think you'll find my sister quite changed. The new interests that have come into her life during the last 6 years have done wonders for her. Just now she is a bit thin and tired from overwork, but a good rest will soon remedy that, and you'll see how young and blooming and happy she looks. Please notice I said happy. That won't mean so much to you as it does to me, of course, for you were too young to realize quite how unhappy she was when you first knew her that winter in Boston. Life was such a dreary, hopeless thing to her then, and now it is so full of interest and joy. First, she has Jamie, and when you see them together you won't need to be told what he is to her. To be sure, we are no nearer knowing whether he is the real Jamie or not, but my sister loves him like an own son now and has legally adopted him, as I presume you know. Then she has her girls. Do you remember Sadie Dean, the salesgirl? Well, from getting interested in her and trying to help her to a happier living, my sister has broadened her efforts little by little until she has scores of girls now who regard her as their own best and particular good angel. She has started a home for working girls along new lines. Half a dozen wealthy and influential men and women are associated with her, of course, but she is head and shoulders of the whole thing, and never hesitates to give herself to each and every one of the girls. You can imagine what that means in nerve strain. Her chief support and right-hand man is her secretary, this same Sadie Dean. You'll find her changed, too, yet she is the same old Sadie. As for Jamie, poor Jamie, the great sorrow of his life is that he knows now he can never walk. For a time we all had hopes. He was here at the Sanatorium under Dr. Ames for a year, and he improved to such an extent that he can go now with crutches. But the poor boy will always be a cripple so far as his feet are concerned, but never as regards anything else. Some way, after you know Jamie, you seldom think of him as a cripple. His soul is so free. I can't explain it, but you'll know what I mean when you see him. And he has retained, to a marvelous degree, his old boyish enthusiasm and joy for living. There is just one thing, and only one, I believe, that would utterly quench that bright spirit and cast him into utter despair. and that is to find that he is not Jamie Kent, our nephew. So long has he brooded over this, and so ardently has he wished it, that he has come actually to believe that he is the real Jamie. But if he isn't, I hope he will never find it out. "There, that's all she says about them," announced Pollyanna, folding up the closely written sheets in her hands. "But isn't that interesting?" "Indeed it is." There was a ring of genuineness in Jimmy's voice now. Jimmy was thinking suddenly of what his own good legs meant to him. He even, for the moment, was willing that this poor crippled youth should have a part of Pollyanna's thoughts and intentions, if he were not so presuming as to claim too much of them, of course. By George, it is tough for the poor chap, and no mistake. "Tough? You don't know anything about it, Jimmy Bean," choked Pollyanna. "But I do. I couldn't walk once. I know." "Yes, of course, frowned the youth, moving restively in his seat. Jimmy, looking into Pollyanna's sympathetic face and brimming eyes, was suddenly not so sure, after all, that he was willing to have this Jamie come to town, if just to think of him made Pollyanna look like that. Chapter 19.